Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming again. Yes, last time around we had a very in-depth discussion about fundamentals of tennis, right? Wherein you spoke about the importance of the use of the ground, to maximum advantage that a player can have, can actually, maximize his tennis play by using the ground.
Mm.
So today we're going to discuss about the mental conditioning because as we understand in today's competitive tennis, competitive age of sport as a whole, mental conditioning, the mental makeup of players has become all the more important, right? And like we also discussed just a little bit last time around, I mean, a lot of matches are won or lost, in the mind itself, right? No matter how good
Mm.
skill
Mm.
set our player is, but if the mental makeup or the mental conditioning is not good enough, he wins those same matches. I mean, he loses those same matches he should have won, right?
Mm.
Uh,
Definitely. Yes.
yes, yes, yes. So obviously, Paul, you have seen a lot of players across different ages, different era, different time. Right from the days when, of course, in the 1990s, when you were with Bat, Britannia, Amritraj tennis,
Mm.
wherein you saw our Indian players, of course. A little bit down the time, you also saw players like your one Thai superstar whom you also had coached for some time, Paradon Strichapan. So how much has that evolved to now? In terms of mental conditioning. I mean, when I'm talking evolution, I'm not only talking about players getting more mentally tough. Maybe I don't know. Also, mental conditioning as a sports science. The overall
Mm.
ecosystem, so to say. Yeah.
Yes. Hasn't moved at all.
Yeah.
Hasn't
Oh.
changed at all.
Yeah.
Yes. No. You summed it up really well in your introduction. You said how important it was, and that it can change matches, and it can all these things. You can lose because of poor mental conditioning in matches. You can win matches because you've got superior mental abilities. But over the years, we've never really, tennis has never really embraced mental training,
Yeah.
nor
Oh.
introduced it into our daily training. As a, like, I think years ago, and many players and coaches may not remember this, but even physical conditioning was not part of a normal session. And
True.
now it's just part, every session, yeah,
Yeah.
every training academy has physical fitness as one of the key elements of a player's development. But mental training has never moved ahead at all. And we tend to also, when it does, when there are places that teach players how to think and be stronger mentally and all those things, it's normally done off the court and by a different person. It's not really ever been integrated into training on a daily basis.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. So, I mean, for you, for example, when do you think is the right time for a kid to undergo mental training? Is there, of course, it's a very subjective question maybe to start off with, but I know there is no, I mean, I don't think I can set an age to that, but
Hmm.
is it still, I'm asking, is it 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? At some point in time, you'll start it, right? So, how young can you actually inculcate those mental training into a kid, so to say?
As soon as they start hitting the ball, the very first day. I
Oh,
mean,
really? Okay.
it really is like, if you take an absolute beginner, and let's imagine a 6-year-old. You're obviously, you're going to integrate technical things, forehand, backhand, and things like that. They're going to get a chance to swing at the ball. At the same time, today, within the training of a 6-year-old, there's a bit of movement that goes on. You just want them to get familiar with moving to a ball, spacing, all these types of things. At the same time, we should be teaching them the skills to that they can use, the mental skills that they can use as well. It should be, and this is where I'm coming from right in the beginning when I started, was to say the mental training should be integrated right from the beginning. We're doing, at the moment, there is a tremendous problem around the competitive tennis world at the lower levels, not at the top. WTA and ATP, they have their minds sorted out already. They know that's how they got there. That's how they rose above the rest.
Yeah.
All the rest need trained for it. And it's just not being done. So there is an epidemic of mental meltdowns occurring throughout the junior circuit and futures circuit, all over the world. Because of this problem, we don't introduce mental training early enough in a player's career and their development.
Okay, I got it. But just want to understand now, for example, a 6-year-old kid, he comes to academy just to have fun, because fun in the sense, fun, I think, is the first element for him or her to really pick up a tennis racket, right?
Yes.
Just to run around. And without, of course, I'm not trying to say that, you can't put some form of method to that fun element as well. But what I'm trying to say is that now to the same 6-year-old kid, how do you actually manage to, inculcate those mental behaviors, saying, okay, this is how it should be? Because for him or her, he is really not thinking too much beyond, okay, I need to be a professional tennis player. I don't think they really think too early, Of course, the first thing for them is, okay, I love playing tennis. Okay, this is the way I'm going to hit the ball, and this is the way my body is going to move. I'm going to feel happy about it. I think that's it. And beyond that, I don't think that they will really think beyond that, right? So how do you manage to inculcate those mental behavior in the same 6-year-old kid in a subtle way, so to say?
Well, it's done in a subtle way. You've hit the nail on the head. If you've got a very young child, they're there because they want to have fun. And if they don't have fun, they won't come back to tennis. So, but here's the thing. If you challenge young children, and I don't mean way above their ability, I'm meaning proportionate to their age and their physical ability and all that. But if you challenge them, that is a form of mental training.
Okay.
That's where I'm getting at. So,
okay.
Maybe coaches that are listening, or parents, they may have this idea that mental training is sort of a very tough, stringent sort of regime type
okay.
of.
Yeah.
It's really not. I mean, I would say, what is the first? I've never really thought about it in this way, but with that question, I'm thinking, what would be the first step? Make it fun. Now, challenge them on the court, make it fun. Now, if you go to the majority of courts around the world with, say, very young children on the court, what you might see is the child standing stationary with a ball being dropped for them to make it easy, so-called make it easy.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
And that goes on and on and on. I would take the beginner at any level, like whether they're sort of talented or semi-talented or not talented at all, and I would challenge them with a ball that they had to move to. And as soon, you're just going in small steps.
Okay.
But I would say initially you're trying to make it fun and yet challenge them.
Okay. Yeah. Correct. Yes. So, like you said, it has to be made in a very subtle way, and wherein he doesn't feel too much about the whole thing, but it becomes a process in the long run. Right? Yeah.
Yes. And very often, around courts that I see, all the elements are there. There's different, there may be 5 or 6 different types of drill they do, but they do them in isolation. So it's very static and not a lot of fun at all. So you have, 10 children lining up waiting for a hit for one ball. And they come in and they miss the ball and they go all the way back to the back of the queue again. There are ways to get everybody out there
involved.
Yeah. One of the suggestions I often give to coaches who are coaching beginners is I say, within your hour, because most young children only really have the stamina or focus to go for 1 hour, but I say to them, in the hour, make it your one goal is to give every kid 100 balls.
Okay.
Now, can you imagine how that court changes if every kid has to get 100 balls, hit 100 balls during that session? Because at the moment, they're probably hitting less than 20 in an hour session with a large group.
Yeah.
And that's not fun and it's not challenging. So, we're talking about developing mental skills. Give the kid lots of balls, and it's going to involve drills that are, where they'll have to run and hit a ball in space and coordinate the ground timing for the ball, for the energy. And things are going to be learnt almost. And what I do say to coaches as a second point is stop coaching, because
Yeah.
the ball can actually coach the child by itself.
Okay.
If I give a 6-year-old 100 balls a lesson every time they turn up, the drills and the ball, by nature of the frantic energy out there, is going to teach the player many of the things they would have had to stop and explain and waste time with.
Okay.
So, that would be a couple of very basic things to get mental training started with beginners. The
Okay.
issue,
True.
the issue, a lot of beginners will be challenged when they come to a court anyway. But the issue actually comes in that if we don't start challenging players mentally after, say, just after that beginning period, when does it get done? And I would suggest that it never gets done, that it's
Okay.
left to the player to find how to cure a problem. So, a normal development process is you go from beginner to sort of beginner development level, and you begin to go to the court every day and do your drills and do your thing, and then eventually you get to tournaments, and that's when the pressure comes. But that
True.
is
True.
also when the most fun occurs. That's why it's tournament play that really keeps players in tennis. So now they come to tournament play, and we have this period of complete meltdowns on the court, lack of confidence, buckling under stress, unable to make decisions, unable to create points, unable to finish points. Just this multiple of
True.
choking
Mm-hmm.
goes on. So when is that addressed? Is it addressed? Because once you get to the tournaments and you're playing almost weekly, and it's an ongoing process now for years, it's sort of tough to come in there now and say, let's try these things mentally. It's
Okay.
probably too
Hmm.
late.
Okay. Okay. True. Got it. Yeah. So basically, the coaches also have to be innovative, right? I mean, new ways of finding it, making it more
Yeah, absolutely.
engaging for the
Yes.
kids. Now, one thing
Yes.
that true. Sorry, you want to add something to that? Yeah.
No, no, no. I'm
Okay.
agreeing totally. Yes. It takes.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
takes. It takes. Coaches will have. I mean, that's why I sort of came up with the 100 ball thing, because if that is the goal and they really try to get the 100 balls per player per session, all sorts of wonderful things happen on the court. There's no
True.
more wasted time or stopping to
Yeah.
talk to one player while the other 10 players stand and wait. Again, you look at the average court today, that instruction can take up, with each player being instructed, and if they miss, then it's an instruction. And if they hit it, it could be another instruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the lesson just keeps stopping.
Something. Yeah.
And when it stops, everyone else in the queue has to stop also. And
Hmm.
if you take away, basically, you stop instructing verbally yourself, the ball can do it for you. So the creativity of coaches needs to be in how do I make the ball talk for me?
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you're teaching ground, feed deep and short balls to a beginner and teach
Okay.
them how to back off and how to come forward.
True. True. Yeah.
And then the instruction can take place during the water break as they're taking a drink. Just quickly say, I would recommend we start doing this. This is where this will get better. But
True.
then
True.
bang,
Yeah. Yeah.
back on the court
Yeah.
and more balls.
Right. Right. So in a way, you're saying you should not interfere too much with the kids' thing, right? I mean, once they're playing, you should let them play because they adapt themselves to that, right? To that whole situation as to how to hit the ball. But yes, it should be a continuous process. Let them enjoy it. But of course, you need to come into the picture during break, and then give them the feedback, the right feedback. But you should not interfere too much into their scheme of things, so to say, right? The kids. Yeah.
Yes. I think, if we can both remember back to when we were children, what we wanted to do if we turned up to tennis practice or football practice or cricket practice was hit the ball or kick the ball.
True. Yeah.
And if 75% of the time is taken up on theory and a discussion, listening to a coach, we're probably not going to be attracted to that too much.
Yeah.
So the creativity has to occur, in getting that ball, getting your drill to teach. For instance, if you over the years, players who have been brought up on a fast court have shorter backswings. Players who have been brought up on a slower surface have fuller swings. Players who get brought up on clay have more extreme grips. Players who are brought up on faster surfaces have more, let's say, Eastern grips, more, not as fuller grips. All these things were taught by the ball, actually, and the surface.
True.
And so, a lot can be taught. And it's not meaning that the coach has to dumb down. In fact, the coach has to smarten up, because it's what sort of drills you're designing now, and when do you come in and make your point, and how can you abbreviate it to its bare minimum so they understand that, bang, they can go back out and start again. So it actually is a slightly different coaching skill that has to be realized.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Now you are a tennis coach, right? I mean, you obviously teach more of the tennis stuff to a player, but at the same time you also inculcate the mental behavior into a player, right? So that is from a tennis coach approach. Now we also have at the same time now so many sports psychologists, right? So how different will your approach be in comparison to a sports psychologist? I hope you're getting the point.
Yes, I'm not sure, because I don't know quite how sports psychologists would deal with, let's say, choking. So I'd imagine it's done in a room or an office somewhere.
Okay.
And I guess with me it's done on the court. And I just to go backwards a little bit, many years ago, through various reasons, I decided, I'd heard all this talk about 90% tennis is 90% mental, and everybody said it and nobody did it. So I began to see how many players were hindered by mental meltdowns of a whole variety. Humans are very complex, and we melt down in different ways: anger, frustration, all this shutdown. We do it all in different ways, but it's all coming from the head. And if you coach long enough competitive players, you begin to realize if you're not dealing with the mental side, you're really not able to help, or shouldn't be, in competitive player coaching.
True.
So I began to sort of try to change my lesson from, being probably, I'd say, just for numbers' sake, 90% technical, and I tried to change it to 90% mental. And it took a lot of time. But I can honestly say, and this is in comparison with, say, a sports psychologist who might be sitting in an office and doing it their way, that when I enter a court, the first area I attack is the head. I don't care. I mean, I'll have a weak forehand. I'll have a poor net play or an errant serve, but I go to the head first, because one of the things that runs around in my head often is everything starts from the head, and I don't care what it is on the court.
Yeah.
If I approach net to you, and I go into your backhand with a nice deep approach, and you spray it out wide on the passing shot, you can't get it in. I'm blaming your head for that. I'm not blaming your backhand.
True.
Why would we go to a separate court and work on your backhand 500 balls and come back and expect anything to be different? You cracked mentally, and then the backhand failed because the head told it to fail or couldn't support the shot, what you were trying to do.
True.
So when I enter a court now, I'm looking 100% at the head first. And that involves all sorts of other things that come into it. The personality of the player. That dictates quite a lot about how I'm going to approach the subject. It could be, no trust built up yet. We might not know each other, so I'll have to go in a different way. There could be total trust, in which I'd go into I'd enter in a different way. But the mental side is happening right from the start. And then during the lesson, if it's an errant backhand, let's say on approach shots, I might very quickly give the player some technical stuff or maybe mental imagery or whatever on the passing shot down the line or wherever. And we will probably do it with a feed for a very short time. And then we go into some sort of drill that gives him or her multiple opportunities to hit passing shots down the line with real pressure. And often it involves points. So if you were to watch my lessons from outside the court, very often you'll be probably thinking, this guy's not coaching, he's just playing points all lesson. And, in a lot of cases, I am. But to me, the real coaching begins when those points begin. I mean, there's a saying in coaching, you can teach a monkey to hit a backhand. Well, so we do it and we quickly move on. The mental part of that backhand has to be addressed now. But what happens in most situations is that the backhand is a problem. The player is taught the backhand, and it's kept in what I call cotton wool. It's not put under stress or duress. And then the player goes to the tournament, and it's not working. Well, why? Because it was never tested and hardened. And this sort of brings up another point. Is this case of the 500 ball or 1,000 ball repetitive type practice? And to me, when coaches do that, there is a place for it, but it should not go to 500, 600 or 300 balls, because, and I know as a player, and you may know also, that if you hit 500 backhands down the line, it starts to feel really, really good. Yeah. And then, and you begin to get that thing everybody calls confidence. And with that confidence, you're feeling pretty good. And then you get to the tournament. And then in the tournament, you're still feeling good. You've had a lot of confidence building over the last 2 weeks. And then something goes wrong. You mistime that first backhand down the line, and the confidence seeps out of the bucket so fast, it's gone. Now, where did it go? Now, so let's go back to training. The 500 ball drill gave you muscle memory, and that was all. And so it's got a small part to play in tennis training, but it's the one go-to thing for almost every training facility. And we also have this epidemic of mental meltdowns in tournaments. So can you see the correlation? We're not securing the brain of the player that we're teaching, and then sending them out into the big wide world, into tournaments, and they're not performing. And everybody say, mentally not strong. Well, how on earth can they be mentally strong? Yes. So, we go all the way back to say, when does this start? What age does it? Starts from day one. and it starts in increments. And by the
Yeah.
time they are good players, they will be performing both technically, hopefully tactically, and then mentally as well.
True. Yeah. Yeah. So now in your training, I guess there will also be a real mock-like situation, right? For example, what is a pressure situation? In a typical match, pressure comes when a server is down, say 30-40 on his one serve, facing a break point, right? So will you
Yeah.
also have that kind of a mock situation wherein you tell your player, okay, now you're down, just a made-up story that you are down 30-40 on your serve, and this is what it is, so that it kind of condition him, okay, this is the situation I already faced, even though in a practice session, and now
Yes.
in a
Yes.
real match situation, this is what it is. So I guess
Yeah.
that's something that
Look.
you do.
There's many ways to do it now. Now that we've sort of
Yeah,
progressed to
yeah,
how to
yeah.
do it.
Yes. Can you
Yeah.
just give a few?
Yeah. Okay. Look, there is a theory that I developed many years ago called the 3 a.m. theory. And basically what that is to take away all the cotton wool that most training supplies the player. They keep them safe. They don't expose them to the danger of not hitting it right, or yeah, I mean, they keep them in cotton wool. And I immediately take them out of that. 3 a.m. basically is that, in the case of the serve, for instance, and I think we mentioned this on a previous talk, but I would have it. Let's say it's the second serve, which is normally most players are pretty decent with their first, but their second is the one that will choke.
Yeah.
So, I might have a player sit off on the court, and I call this the nominated player game, and they will sit in a chair on courtside. Two players will play points, and at different times, I will bring that player from the chair into the court and make
Oh,
them serve under pressure.
okay.
And yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it doesn't work. And but very, very quickly, within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're starting to see them operate. Because what have I done? I've done the opposite of the cotton wool. The cotton wool effect would be to take that player and do basket after basket of serving with more spin, which is the case in a second serve, so that hopefully when they get to the tournament, it's going to be fine because the technique has been fixed.
Yeah.
But we know that doesn't happen. We know it's, and again, everything starts in the head. So the double faulting in the tournaments is the head. So the head has to be addressed. So basket after basket, day after day for weeks, it seems like it should work, but it just doesn't. What we have to, and
True.
that's the cotton wool effect. And coaches may even say, look, give me another month or two on the second serve, and then Joey or Sally can go to tournaments. But that's the
Yeah.
cotton wool effect.
True.
And I do the exact opposite. I will teach, maybe it's technical. Maybe we do need a bit more lifting the ball, top spin, feel for the arc of the ball, that type of thing. I'll teach that, and I'll teach it as quick as I can, and then I'll put them under stress with it. So, you can see now how mental training can be basically inputted into every session you do. And a lot of it is just basically take out repetition, too much of it, take it out. Take out long-winded talks. Just have them under pressure, doing things under pressure.
True.
And, get them to tournaments as quick as possible. Often, parents will contact me and say they would like their daughter or son to come for training. And, they have this problem. And invariably, it's mental. They haven't won for 6 months. They haven't done this. It's invariably mental. And so, I will often in that conversation say, well, look, come for this 10-day period, but is there a tournament they can play straight after it?
Yeah.
And there's
Okay.
almost like a hush goes over the conversation on the phone. Like, oh my gosh, I don't think that's enough time. That is often, I don't think that's
Yeah.
enough time, is it?
Okay.
But you see, again, what I want to do is to train the problem and have them go straight into deep water in the form of a tournament where there's pressure. Because I want to see, have we been effective?
True. Yeah, true. Okay, I just picked up something maybe relevant. When you were saying about the second serve, of course, second serve, everybody goes for a conservative second serve so that there is no double fault, right? And they, basically plays defensively on the second serve. But we have also seen players like Mark Philipposis who would go bang even on the second serve. So his mentality is totally different, right? Obviously, I'm sure when he goes for a second serve, he thinks, I'm not going to make a mistake. It's going to be an ace or whatever. So is it not going to conflict, if you tell, for example, the same Mark Philipposis, okay, you're actually going to, go for a high spinning, high bouncing spinning ball instead of a flat serve, going for an ace. So how do you tackle such a guy with that kind of mindset? Because I'm sure he has a positive mindset of going there and hitting an ace, and he's not actually thinking of a double fault at all, right? I hope that, it's making sense.
Yeah, I understand. But there is a bit of misunderstanding between us, because when you started asking that question, I smiled because I never ask players to slow it down and be conservative on a second serve.
Oh, okay.
I don't do that. Yeah, no, I want them to hit the biggest second serve of their lives every time.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
But to do that, you need control through spin. Every ball must contain spin. There's no such thing as a flat ball. Every ball must contain spin. Now, if you're going to really hit the ball hard, and I think if we were to go back and, well, I think even modern day players, Philippoussis probably had, two big serves, but even the modern day players have fairly big second serves. There's not much taken off them. But what you'll see is probably a little more lift through the ball as they hit it as hard as they can. So, you're probably on a first serve, you're trying to make the ball go from A to B as quickly as possible. And you want the same thing to happen on a second serve, and particularly in doubles, because, in doubles now today, serves are big. There's no more of this kick serve bouncing up around a player's shoulders saying you'll be creamed at the top level. So, I think, again, you went to the conservative view of what I said, whereas I'm meaning the biggest second serve in the world, to hit the thing as hard as you can. But when we had that analogy, it could have been because players had a fear of doing it, and often on a second serve, it's not because we hit too hard or too risky, because we choke and tighten, and the arc goes out of the ball, and the upward drive, we retract rather than expand into the second serve.
Okay, got it. So, I mean, among the current crop of player, who do you think has the best mental, makeup? Okay, not necessarily that he has to be a Novak or a Rafa. It could be maybe out of 50, ranked player also, who might not, who would have made up for his lack of maybe a little bit of tennis skill, but with such mental pain makeup that he has, he would have compensated a lot for the lack of his tennis skill on the other side, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just offhand, I can't think of anyone that stands out, but I think that's probably the reason why that is so, is because so many of the top players are so good mentally. We can point to Nadal and his tremendous fight and feistiness and never say die attitude, but we think of Nadal often because of his incredible run at Roland Garros and stuff, and you'd have to be amazingly strong mentally to do that. But then again, all the others have it also. We just have different personalities and we show it differently. Djokovic, I would say, would be way up there in mental toughness. You take the top 10, the mental stress of staying in the top 10 is it's a strain to front up every day, year after year. I mean, you've got to put the training in, the application, and your private life is sort of going on hold for many years. It just the single-mindedness of being in the top 10 is grueling. And I think that's what holds, the players on the fringes, people like Monfils and all these guys,
Yeah.
with the same talent. They just can't put the same amount of single-mindedness.
Yeah.
I mean,
True.
it's almost, I mean, you look at the Djokovic's and stuff, and the diets and the fitness regimes and all that. This is why they're there. And the ability to stay there is a form of mental toughness, mental skill.
True.
Because most of us would melt
Yeah.
at the stress they're under.
True. Now, talking about personalities, since you mentioned about that, obviously you've got different personalities in tennis or really any sports, right? For example, actually I asked the same question to somebody else also, but I think it really makes sense. Now, for example, earlier we used to see players like John McEnroe and Goran Ivanisevic would really throw tantrums, breaking rackets and all that. Yeah, that's one personal trait that I have, but not meaning that they will again come back with a very bad game, right? So how do you manage such players? I'm talking about the mental conditioning, because if you maybe they have vented out something, and then maybe help. Again, I'm not talking about the ethical part of it. Of course, it's not good. You should not do that on tennis court at all. But I'm talking more from the mental makeup. I'm talking from the different personalities that we all have. So how do you manage it?
So you're basically saying, if I had McEnroe, how would I deal with him?
Yes, that's
or players like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what. So what I'm trying to say is that you obviously have to let somebody be himself, right? When I'm saying be himself, it doesn't mean that if you ask McEnroe to be himself, then he'll do a lot of other things as well. But I'm saying, in a controlled manner, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, in tennis, we tend to have a lot of sort of, I guess we call them type A people. They are very driven and very single-minded, and those type of people tend to be very hard on themselves. And then I guess you have your very own Yuki Bambry, who is a very calm guy on court and always has been.
Yeah.
And there's actually an example of someone who came along. I guess the genetics were good, and I don't think he's had to work that much on the mental side. He was always a very calm, calculated sort of player when all the other people around him weren't.
True.
And he went along. He's gone a long way, and let's hope he continues. But if you're dealing with all these different personality types, you're dead right. You have to allow them to. You can't change a John McEnroe, just as you can't ask from the old days, if we're talking about a Bjorn Borg to start expressing himself. No, and the great thing about tennis is it allows, and sport in general, it allows all personalities. So as a coach, you're probably having to deal with what you've got. I have had very volatile players in the past, and very often you have to sort of understand the person also themselves a little bit, and why they do it. There's all sorts of, again, to repeat, humans are very complicated. And, you may, I give the analogy, if, you drop a glass of water, it could instigate laughter. You could just, I've dropped the water.
True.
Or embarrassment, or anger, or frustration. But it's the same act of dropping the water.
Yeah.
So it really is a case where the coach has to understand the personality of the player. And if that dropped water creates anger, then I guess that's what you've got, and you have to deal with it.
Okay.
as a coach to the player.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've had players who have really hurt their careers because they haven't been able to keep it together. But I've had a case just recently, actually, of a younger guy who was sort of a serial, how would you say, clown on the court, and acted up a lot. He has come around really quick, because it seems now, looking back, that all he needed was guidance on how to do it, and he was so talented that once given the right direction, he basically calmed down and said, "I'm here to play." Whereas what I was seeing in the early days was just total frustration at not being able to. He knew he had talent in him. Probably not many people outside knew it, and I didn't exactly know it when I watched him play. But boy, the tirades that would go on, and you'd think, well, maybe this boy is a waste of time. He can't control himself. But on sort of being directed on multiple things, he sort of said, "Okay, I get it. I have a job to do." And now in matches, he's busy getting on with his job. So there's a whole lot of myriad of situations with players that differ. David Sharan, for example, is an extremely quiet guy on court.
Yeah.
But there's a huge fire inside him. Huge fire, competitive fire.
Yeah, yeah.
And he is a very competitive guy, but you just don't see it from the outside. Whereas someone like Leander Paes, you see everything.
Yeah.
You see it all.
True.
And yet, off court, he's fairly calm sort of character, very calm.
Actually, yeah, true.
But when the fire does stoke up, you see everything.
Yes, it's true.
So, as a coach, I guess if there are coaches listening to this, it's important that we look at players not as sort of all being common, and a bad temper is a bad temper, and because we're all a bit different, and we all do things for different reasons. We react for different reasons. Yeah.
True. Yeah, how important will meditation play in mental conditioning? I mean, do you inculcate that habit also? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, I do it a lot.
Yes.
And I'm smiling because I had a group just recently. We did it over a Zoom meeting of about 24 children.
Oh,
and I sort of got a bit of a funny response from one of the coaches afterwards, saying, like almost like yoga meditation was like voodoo. And I said, well, I can stop doing it if you like. But he was okay. But I said, look, no, it doesn't. It's not anti-religion, or I sort of had to calm his fears a wee bit. But no, I find meditation really helpful, and I've used it sometimes on really, and I'll say bad cases. I don't mean it in a bad, but cases where players are having just so many difficulties that might relate to off court as well, and just in that sort of zone. And there are obviously different meditations for different purposes and needs. But no, I use it quite a lot, and I encourage tennis players to take up forms of meditation. I remember quite a few years ago, I had an Indian male player who his mind was actually too quick. So, and often, which is great. I mean, tennis, you have to have a very fast brain. It has to go from skill complexity to skill complexity very fast. And he was just doing it sometimes a little bit too fast. And there were a few errors here and there based on that. And we sort of knew what was going on. And we had to bring him back, like it was almost recalibrating him. And we used yoga for that. And I think it was I forget the yoga term the Sanskrit term, but it's staring at the flame of the
Okay.
candle.
Mhm.
And that calibrated his mind, and we had no problems after that. So, there are a lot of interesting, interesting anecdotes I have with yoga. It's very valuable.
True,
And
true.
in India, you should be doing it. I mean, all the academies should be doing it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not just the stretching.
True, true, true. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yes, Paul. Again, it's been such an interesting discussion, and I'm sure all our coaches and players will really, have great help from this. Whoever is listening to this, and we discussed so many things to start off with. You said that there could not be any, age to start off when it comes to, mental training. Kid as young as 6 years, if he's fed with different types of balls on a tennis court, then why not the mental training as well, right? Because it's just another process.
Right.
Yes. And you also spoke about being inventive in the same mental training for the coaches, right? I mean, like feeding 100 balls, letting them enjoy the moment and then actually give the feedback instead of interfering with those same kids, in between.
Yeah.
And then also we discussed about the different mock drills that you would be doing with your own players, right? You will create a situation wherein somebody is going through a certain situation of, say, down a break point, right? Which you would obviously be in a real match situation. And then you actually, let them overcome that in a practice situation so that it becomes kind of a process, right? It's all about a process.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Then we also spoke about different personality types on the tennis court, how to handle them. You've got different, like you have yourself had so many different players with different personality traits and how to handle them. Yes. So it's really been, again, very enriching in terms of the knowledge, the expertise that you have been, offering for over so many years, and now you're still offering to us. So thank you so much, Paul. And it was really a pleasure catching up with you again for the second series. And hopefully we'll again, have another series, coming soon.
Yes, look, thank you very much also. And, this is probably my favorite topic. I think it's something that's lacking in tennis, and there needs to be more of it. So I've enjoyed the talk. There's much more.
True. Thank you so much, Paul, again. Thank you so much. And yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Good night.